on Zoom. Public, we will not be broadcasting the video conferencing until we have thoroughly consulted with our people. Welcome everyone to the town board workshop for floodplain management.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Morelli.
Here.
Councilperson Chase.
Here.
Councilperson Brown.
Here.
Councilperson Kais.
Here.
Supervisor Woolever.
Here. Purpose of the meeting tonight is to discuss the floodplain management proposed floodplain manager of basically the DEC, state of New York. An existing building to a certain extent from floodwaters. Want to take it away, John?
Sure. We've got a packet everybody got, and we've been updating the board, and the board's been very well aware as we went forward how this came about, the code section that we had, the interaction that we had as the result of a DEC audit, and our subsequent conversations with them. And we had made a determination several months ago to look at the model code that the DEC put out, along with the application for a floodplain development permit. Even though the town had both of those documents, we were within 95% of what the new model code suggested. And at the in consultation with Kevin Overton, he said it would be a lot easier to just adapt the model code than it would be to take our code and the model code and do a word by word search. So what you've got in front of you tonight is that model code. And I don't intend to read through the whole thing, but I would like to point out several things that I found in my reading of it. And unfortunately, the pages weren't numbered. So I'm going to have to refer you to sections. And if you could go to section 65.11. It's basically called the designation of the local administrator. And several weeks ago, I was appointed the local administrator, which is a term that the DEC and FEMA uses. And this code section basically said that the code enforcement officer is hereby appointed local administrator. You could put building inspector in there. Again, a lot of people don't understand, the fact that we all have the same certification. So that's up to you folks, how you want to, if you want to do anything with that at all. The other thing just below that is section 6513 for fees. That's something that I've got as a question later on in the fee schedule. Does the town want to charge a $100 fee to obtain a flood development permit? And we'll go through that in, like I say, just a little bit. And please stop me if you've got questions as we go along.
I will.
Okay.
Just on that point, is it customary for other towns? Have you looked at what other towns do?
Most other towns, there's nothing across the board because different towns have different levels of sophistication as to what they do, how they determine it, and the resources that they have to go look at things. The bigger towns have more resources and they don't have to spend as much time. But even Henrietta doesn't, as big as they are, they're going through and revising their system too. Typically, our fees are based on the level of inspections that have to occur, which is why a house permit is $400 and a fence is $50, depending on how many times you have to go look at it. Again, this is going to be such an onerous process that, it's going to take some time, but again, with what the resident that has to deal with this is going to have to spend, how good do we feel about charging them $100?
And Gene, this is Kevin. I will say that,
Kevin,
Oh,
Kevin's speaking.
oh, sorry. I was just saying that I've looked at a few, like the model code provision calls out for $100 kind of, baseline fee to do this work because again, to John's point, there is certainly going to be some the town's going to incur some costs in trying to determine whether or not a particular parcel is within the floodplain. If it is, how much of the property is in the floodplain, is what they're doing in that floodplain. Do we need to relocate it someplace else? So there will be some administrative costs associated with it. We're just trying to determine whether or not the $100 is sufficient to cover the actual due diligence that can be required to do the actual determination of the floodplain applicability.
Yeah, I know.
Can you say
Kevin.
that again, Kevin?
Kevin, you might have to repeat yourself because we didn't turn it up until halfway through your speech.
No, not a problem at all. I was just simply saying that the $100 is kind of I don't want to say the industry standard, but it is what is offered in the model code as a baseline administrative cost, because there is certainly going to be costs associated with the town to determine whether or not a particular property is within the floodplain. If it is, how much of the property is within the floodplain is the proposed improvement or a modification or whatever is going in there within that area. And are there any alternatives that we can put so that you don't have to comply with these provisions and make things a little bit easier for the applicant? So certainly, I would say $100 is a reasonable baseline, but I would imagine, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's going to be some additional costs associated with coming up with that determination that may, I don't want to charge more than the 100, but at the same time, I don't want John doing, $400 worth of work on the front end to say, oh, you can move your fence 5 feet this way. But I mean, again, we need to figure out a reasonable balance between what the applicant has to pay and what the town cost is. That's why the $100 is, I just wanted to let everybody know the $100 is kind of just a placeholder in the model code going forward. I believe our existing code had that same $100 figure because that has been the same figure historically going back in time, but I don't know that we've been diligent doing this, so I don't know that the $100 is actually an accurate reflection of the dollar amount. That's all I was trying to say. Sorry.
Thank you.
and this paragraph goes on to say that I can also require a deposit of no more than $500 to cover costs. And that's going to be another question when we get to the fee schedule. For all the other activities, we say that the applicant is responsible for any additional engineering or legal fees plus an administrative. So, we could do the 500, we've got some options on what we want to do here, but just something for you folks to consider.
It's really a benefit to the resident because they start putting stuff up in flood prone area. Better to have it inspected before it goes on.
Yeah, exactly. Before you get
I
started
mean,
doing that.
when you're doing it, you might be not so happy you gotta pay $100.
Right, and
But it's for your own tax.
the code also states that anybody that commences work without this process taking place is doing so at their own risk. So if somebody puts up a shed and they didn't follow the procedure, they're at a very real risk of having the shed removed, after they've done the work. So a lot of it's going to be education to people, to let them know how we do this, what we've got to do, and how we can work with them. So, okay, the next section that I'd like you to look at, if you could, is 6518. And that talks about residential structures. And I just want to give people an idea of what they're looking for. Now, we have the base flood elevation data that we've gotten from FEMA. And if you look at this 6518, it's section A, elevation, and then number 1. What they're saying is that if you're going to construct a new house, of which I've got 9 going on right now, the first floor elevation is gonna have to be at least 2 feet above that base flood elevation. So those are the types of distances we're looking at here, okay? And I just did that to illustrate, what we're looking at. If you go down, to 6520, which is about 5 pages past that, it talks about non-residential structures, which would be your, a garage. If somebody was gonna build a garage on their house, again, they're gonna have to go to the 2 feet above the base flood elevation, or the, structure is going to have to be flood proof. That's at 6520, number one. So, a lot of this code gets into the actual, how do you do this? You know, how do you flood proof things? How do you build things within the floodplain? They talk about, driving piles and attaching beams to piles. And then the last one that I would refer you to is 6523. And then it's going down about another 4 or 5 pages. That talks about accessory structures, which would be detached garages, sheds, pole barns, and even fences are considered a structure. And they're talking about, basic flood elevation plus 2 feet of freeboard, which is just a fancy way of saying the distance from the top of the water at the flood level to the base elevation of that structure. So, mechanical and utility equipment, you know, if you're gonna put electric out in your barn, if you're gonna have water, you know, people have run water and electric to their barns at quite a distance. If you're getting into the floodplain now, it's gonna be a whole new ballgame with how you do that. So, this, Kevin did a really nice job, getting this done. Those were the only, I wasn't gonna read this cover to cover tonight. I just wanted to highlight those couple of sections. You know, this is something you folks should look through. Like I said before, it's 95% of what we've already got in our code. So it's nothing really new. You know, there's just a few updates that they've come up with. So, any questions on this before I move on?
Requirement new?
No.
It's on.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty much the model for FEMA, since they implemented this program. And I'll just reiterate that our FEMA maps are dated 2007, and we verified with New York State DEC, who administers the program for FEMA, that those are the most recent maps. Now, we do have a process where if an applicant can prove that the floodplain maps are wrong, they can be amended. But again, that's just gonna be, how much expense do you want to incur to get an engineer to challenge those FEMA maps? But it is available. And if somebody, takes exception to my determination that they are in a floodplain, they can always go to our zoning board of appeals for a variance. So that is an option for people. Okay. Oh. Yeah, I was gonna say that at the end, but I'll bring it up now. Everybody has seen our, new zoning map where the county overlaid the floodplain, both the 50-year flood and the 100-year floods on there. That's not very precise in determining where somebody could do something on a property. So I talked to the county, and they're developing a GPS program for us that we're gonna be able to hopefully pull up a street address, and it's gonna show the exact location of the floodplain on that property. And we could say, well, you can't put the barn here, but you can put it up here. And that's free. They're working on it. I'm supposed to have that towards the end of August. They went through that glitch where everybody shut down with Google or whatever, and it just blew up the program. So I was hoping to have it ready by now, but she told me it'd probably be another couple of weeks before we get that. So,
Just a point of reference as you're talking, I'm thinking of things, and I guess this is for Kevin really. You had just mentioned that if a resident doesn't like your determination, Don, or based on the maps, you look at it and it appears to be in a floodplain, and therefore we have to go this route, or the applicant does. You said they can apply for a variance. Is that correct? When it's not necessarily just a town law, this is a DEC requirement?
This model code suggests
Yeah.
that they go to a variance.
Yes, there is the
Already.
model code has a variance provision in it, and the zoning board of appeals is the appropriate forum for an applicant who wants to disagree with any determination that the town makes regarding flooding, or the floodplain mitigation, I should say. Yes, the ZBA is the appropriate board to hear that. So they would have a variance request application potentially if they disagree. And let's say worst case scenario, the ZBA determines that their property is in a flood zone and you have to have X, Y, and Z mitigation measures associated with your property, associated with your proposed use. If the applicant disagrees with that determination, then it would be an Article 78 appeal, similar to any other appeal of the ZBA, to make a determination from an appellate court. But yes, the ZBA is going to be the body that's going to govern variances of this proposed code.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Sorry.
It does, thank you.
Given the applicant, they come in and go through the process of building a house, especially changing the floodplain. But maybe it might be in there, but of notification of neighbors that something's gonna go on, and what are their ability to protest that?
Right. That doesn't change any from what we have in place right now. No one can do anything on their property that is going to negatively impact a neighbor. So, we've got a situation now where somebody will come in and start to grade. That's why they have the topo maps done at the planning board level, so that we know, what the grading is supposed to be on that property. Our town engineer has vetted those and, has made sure that they've done that. And that they would have to comply. We had that situation out on Woodruff Road where there was a little bit too much fill brought in, and the homeowner had to correct that because it was going to create a situation on an adjacent property.
I know that exists in normal, with the
Yeah.
floodplain deal, a little bit more. touchy.
Yeah, one of the big no-nos is doing any type of filling, so cuts and fills within a floodplain are going to be looked at very strenuously as part of this process. And that's why you've got that civil engineer or the licensed surveyor involved, so that they aren't negatively impacting anybody else as they do this.
If an applicant was to come to you and they wanted to build a shed and they said, I want to put it here, would they have to go through the $100 application fee before you could look at it on that?
When we get to the building permit application, I've added a sentence on there. Is this in a floodplain? Yes or no? So that when any application that comes in, once we've officially adopted this, I'm going to take that quick cursory look, hopefully on that GPS program. If it's free and clear, we check it no, and we proceed as normal. If it's yes, then we're going to have to stop the process and say, look, if we can't relocate this, or if your entire property is in that floodplain, now you're going to have to suspend the building permit application and do the floodplain development.
But if you go on your program and you're able to tell them that they could move it to, move it to the right a little bit, you'll be fine.
Yes.
They won't have to reach this point.
The only thing that I have to clarify with the DEC is, let's say half your property, how far away from the floodplain? If the floodplain ends here, can I be right next to it, or do I have to be, is there like a setback away from that? And I just haven't understood yet what that is. And, that's guidance that, we don't have anywhere else, so I just got to get it.
I guess I'm just asking the question more.
But,
the residents, so that they know, like, if they want to come to you, is more guidance rather than just get slapped with an application.
Yeah, and again, we're going to talk about it later. I want to do an information meeting with town residents and be able to tell people that, that's exactly what we'll do. If you've got a question, let's look at it. And hopefully this program can help us pinpoint, on a property where you could build something.
And I
Okay.
think and I don't mean to cut you off, John, but
That's
I'm
fine.
hopeful that if people avail themselves of the ability to come to us and say, or come to John and say, look, here's what I'm contemplating. Can you take a look and let me know, am I gonna, encounter any obstacles, let's just say. At least this way we can kind of come up with a battle plan of how to mitigate this for the applicant. Before they submit an application, before things get official, let's just figure out how to make this work. And if we have to get creative, we have to get creative. No big deal. But let's take that time to figure that out on the front end so that when the applicant submits their application, it's far more clean. It's just going through the process as opposed to saying, oh, now we have this issue this hurdle you're going to have to clear. I'd like to try to do as much of this on the front end as possible. And I think that's what John has been, that I shouldn't say I want to, that's what John has indicated that he wants to do. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it makes all the sense in the world. So if we have to do a little bit of work on the front end to figure out, do we have an issue first and foremost? And if we do, how best to mitigate that issue for the applicant? I think that's, in the best interest of all the residents of the town.
And we do that right now very regularly. People will call up and say, hey, I live here. What are my setbacks? Where can I put this? It's going to be the same type of process for the residents. Okay. All right. If you're okay, we'll go on and do the development application form. And that's also in your packet. It looks like this. It just says Town of Brush Floodplain Development Permit Application. This I didn't have Kevin do because we again decided to take the model form that the DEC gave us, and I just made it into a rush document, on Word. And again, it is, as you look through this, folks, this is going to be very detailed. And they're telling people right in here that they've got to obtain the services of a civil engineer or a licensed surveyor in order to complete the information that's got to be submitted for these development permits. So I didn't make any particular notes on this. This is very cut and dried. It's a lot more detailed than our building permit applications, but again, you're doing stuff for the federal government, and this is what FEMA, they want to make sure that everything is being verified against existing information that they've got. And one of the reasons this is so detailed is because of the disaster money that FEMA pays out. They've got to be able to justify that, the disaster that occurred, things were or they weren't according to what the requirements are. So that drives a lot of this detail in here. Okay. So again, this is right out of FEMA and what New York State suggested that we do. Again, the application that we had was fairly close. There's just a few tweaks that were added here and there, so it's really not that different. Are we okay to go on with that? Okay. The next thing, and you guys got the blue version. Our copier wasn't cooperating, but this is the actual permit. It's pretty much modeled after the building permit that we use. The front of it, again, the date it was issued, the permit number. I've already worked with our IPS system, and I told them I had to have a different sequence of numbers that was separate from our building permit numbers, but it still was sequential, for the year that we were in. So IPS came up with a numbering system for me. So we'll be able to track these and we'll have it electronically. And we'll do just like we do with our building permit applications. The application, the engineering information that we get, everything will be scanned and put into the IPS system. So we'll have, backups of everything. But again, we've got a permit number, the date that it was issued, the date that it expires. I would still anticipate having a 1-year expiration on these. I'm still gonna not acknowledge text messages because I get a telephone number. I need this and I don't know who it is or anything else, so I have people call me or email me, but, so this is the floodplain development permit. It's issued to the address, the work's to be done. And, on the back, similar to my building permit, the inspections that we have to do, these, could be adapted a little bit as we go through this and become more comfortable with it. But this was the entire list. We may not need to do all these things, but I'd rather have them identified so that if we do need them, I can check them. If we find out that, you know, hey, we never use, 4 of these, maybe later we can take them off. But again, this is the entire list. And right now I would just anticipate using the ones that I need. Okay. So, again, this was, I put that note up there, inspections and requirements are permit specific, depending on the application parameters, because there's so many different things that you could do. And, you know, the inspections are gonna be pretty much tailored to what the work is, so. That's what I'm planning for this. They would be in that blue color, as opposed to the yellow that I'm using right now. Okay? Now, if we're okay with that, the building permit application form. This is very simple. There's only 2 additions on this. And you'll see in the building permit application up above where it's got the applicant's name and address. Then there's the property tax account number. I added that located in a floodplain, yes or no, right there. And that would be the thing that would, you know, stop this permit and, you know, start the flood development, permit. And then, Pam asked that we put this copy to the assessor's office down at the bottom. Right now, they get a copy of the certificate of occupancy or the certificate of completion that I issue at the end of the permit. As a courtesy, Pam's been, giving them copies of this, but we just wanted to make it official that the assessor needs to get a copy of every building permit application, just so she's aware of what's going on in the town as well. So those were the only 2 changes to the building permit application. And, you know, these are all documents that you guys are gonna have to have a public hearing on and vote on. So it's a lot, but, you know, it's all tied into the same, permit process that we're looking at. Okay, any questions on that? If not, we can go to the fee schedule that I put there. And I took this opportunity too. We're on page 3 of the fee schedule. Up at the top there, this has nothing whatsoever to do with the floodplain management, but when we did the fee schedule for 2024, those top 3 items got left off of the official fee schedule. And those are, luckily, it's all commercial cell tower work, commercial power supply, and commercial data supply. And I've had several of these, and we're getting more with the Gola Road substation. Last year, they came in and they buried 3,200 feet of data cable. They originally wanted to put it on poles, and because it's a town road, we were able to tell them to bury it. We've got more coming in now, and this is all going to support Horseshoe. We're gonna be getting a lot more power lines and whatnot run. And I do have a commercial power permit in the works right now over on High Tech Drive, and they already know that the permit's $1,000. They sent me a check without being asked. But I just wanted to add these 3 back in, as long as we're playing with this. And then what I did, a quarter of the way down the page, I added the floodplain development permits, and I put that $100 in there. And then what I didn't put down, and what we were kind of talking about earlier, we're down at the bottom in the green, you've got the other building department fees. That's where I would put possibly the other floodplain development fees, any legal or engineering fees incurred by the town for plan review or consultation, and then charged in full to the applicant plus a 15% administrative reimbursement. Or the way the code says, we could charge, put a $500 deposit down, and we do that depending on what we're looking at. So that's something that, the board's gonna have to decide, do we want to charge the $100, which is gonna cover basically my time to, do some digging into things and whatnot. And we want to be able to legitimately charge an applicant if we've got to do legitimate engineering work or legal consultation. With them having to get their own engineer, I think a lot of that would go away, but
It's just like any other application. If we have to do that, we charge it back.
right. And I've got a policy, I don't know about the other departments, but before I'm gonna charge an applicant for something, I'm gonna sit down with Dan and make sure he's aware of it and make sure that the applicant knows it before we start incurring any fees on their behalf. Because I don't think it's right to give them a bill 6 months afterwards. If I'm gonna have Kevin or Matt looking at something, I want the applicant to know it up front. That's just how we're gonna do that. So, with the exception of what I hand wrote in here about the additional fees, that's, up to you folks, how we want to do this. So, and again, I'd like to add those three.
I don't know. That could apply to any application.
Okay. So that was the sum total of what we had on the agenda. I added two more things, and one of them was the GPS program. And the second one, I talked to you folks back in early June about the communication that I want to send out to the town residents and the business owners and property owners and whatnot. And this is that same handout again.
You said the county is the one that's developing the GPS program, right? And that's gonna be free to the town, is that correct?
They told me that they were not going to charge me for that program.
Okay.
Okay. So when I first brought this up to the board back in early June, once we get everything in place, I want to send a communication out to everybody in the town to say, hey, look at, I'm not going to spend a lot of time saying why it hasn't been enforced for the last bunch of years. Just the fact that this is a requirement of the federal government that's administered by New York State. And this is what we have to do in order to remain in compliance. And just go through, what the plan is, what they're trying to do. And let them know, that it is going to be taking place, and we'll have to set a date that's effective such and such. This is when we're going to go full bore with this. And then at the end of this letter, and I'm not married to this, this was just my first draft of it. I said, I would like to hold a meeting out in the pavilion. For anybody that's interested for further information, and my thought was we'd have some of the forms. I could have the zoning maps up that show it, the different, forms that we're looking at here. Hopefully, we'll have that permit or the GPS program available. Might be able to have it. I don't know if there's a TV out there. Might be able to tie it into the TV and actually show the people how the program works. But I just think it would be beneficial to get, first of all, let everybody in the town know what's happening, because it is going to impact some people more than others. Some people are just totally free and clear of the floodplain and, life is good. But then those that are, they'll get the information, and then we can, have another follow-up out there and get, into a little more detail with everybody as to how this is actually going to impact.
Do you have a map that you could attach with this so they know whether they're affected?
I've got, I've got the zoning map with the floodplain overlay.
Yeah.
The problem is that, even at 11 by 17, it gets very difficult to look at. You could put an 11 by 17 in there, which would give kind of, somewhat of an overview, but the detail isn't going to be there.
It'd be nice if that could be a link on our website. We have the town zoning map, and this would be just another level that I'd like to have.
Whatever information we can share, I'm all for it.
Well, people making the trip down just to find out they're not affected at all.
Right.
And that's fine, and I, you know, as Gene talks about this, my thought was, you know, we've got the building department page. We might want to think about having the flood development, something along those lines, just because it is so new.
Zoning maps and then your different overlays.
Well, and the form,
But sometimes you gotta go.
Yeah.
Right. and, you know, we could have information and forms and different things too, but, you know, that's my thought, that I want to send out this communication, and we're getting close to being ready to do that. You know, once you guys get the local laws passed, we get all the forms passed, we get the program in place, and we get ready to say, okay, we're gonna push this out October 1st or whatever it is. You know, get this mailing out and then have a meeting scheduled, you know, where we can talk to folks. So questions, comments, or concerns before we get into the budget stuff?
You've done a good job on it
Thank you.
thus far. And, I'm sure once we read through it, there'll be some questions, but
And I don't know, I think Pam and Sharon were looking at perhaps the 28th. Yes. For these public hearings. If you folks have any questions whatsoever, shoot me an email. And what I'd like to do is, if you ask me a question, I'd like to send the entire board back the question and the answer. Just in case it was something that, oh yeah, wow, you know, so. But by all means, send emails. So we can, you know, I don't expect you guys to be experts on this, but, you know, the more information you've got, you know, I think it'll be helpful.
We want to set that public hearing now before we get into the budget stuff, or
We'll do it. That's that video a little bit.
Oh, we can't do, we have to do that at a regular.
what we're tentatively looking, 28.
I think going forward. After we get the public hearing, we get the input, we get this stuff done, I think we should look at trying to do this late September, early October.
From my end, a lot of it's gonna be how quick can the county get this program to me? How good is it? Right, because if this isn't what we need, we can buy other.
Yeah.
You know, but the county said it's free.
Have you looked into the cost of the purchasing it?
Yeah, you're talking several thousands.
Less than 10, more than 10,
Probably in the vicinity of that.
plus probably an annual
Yeah.
renewal.
I would think so. Yeah, I didn't, when the lady told me she could do it for free, and based on the level of detail they provided with the overlay, I was
She's
very
been
impressed
very
with that.
good,
Yeah,
very good. I'm very impressed with the
so,
county person who does this.
yeah, so,
I know, I know.
Young Tang, Lynn,
Yeah,
so
she's been,
I
very
don't have,
helpful to the,
I don't have
She's on.
a budget sheet.
I will say that I've represented districts that or towns that have purchased their own software, and it is equal to, or if not inferior to, what the GIS that's being offered. So hopefully, John, once he gets it, has the same feeling that this is more than sufficient for what we need to ascertain. Look, Kevin's property's got floodplain, but it's only this portion of the property. So you want your shed here, how about you move your shed there? I think that what is being offered is going to be more than sufficient to address our needs. But you know, the proof will be in the pudding once we see it. But I know that other municipalities have spent tens of thousands of dollars for very similar software and are like, well, what did we do this for? But you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I didn't want to go down the road of, you know, really doing a lot of inquiries until I saw what the county gave me. So. Okay, looking at the budget. Personal services for building, that's the same salary as last year, plus the modest COLA allowance. The personal services for the floodplain. Now I got that budget account number from Janice. And that's the 11,787 that we agreed to, when you appointed me. contractual for the building, we'll get into that cost. We can go into the individual accounts later or in just a couple minutes. The conceptual or the contractual for the floodplain came out to $2,050. And these were kind of guesstimates, talking with some people, and we'll go through those as well, which came up with a total budget of $69,513 for building and floodplain. My revenue for the building has been $15,000 for the last 3 years. Now, we had allowances because we had Werner and we had the solar farm up at number 6 road, which were $25,000 building permit fees. So they didn't really count. But my typical building fees right now, we're in August and I'm right around $17,000. So I figured we'd up that to $20,000 next year for the revenue part of it. You know, we can't guarantee, you know, how many people are going to apply for building permits, but I've been doing 122, 125, and 130. And right now I think my next one is going to be 90. And again, we're in first part of August. So, and I've got a couple of big ones coming in. We've got Tough Trucks is coming in. I've got another new house, 2,500 square feet. And I'm going to do another foundation, the big foundation for the temple. I just got the drawings for that too. So, you know, there's going to be a couple of, you know, more large building permit fees coming in. So, and we always get the occasional, we want to upgrade a cell tower, and those are $1,000 too. So, like I say, I don't mind trying the $20,000. I added the revenue for the floodplain, and that's going to depend again on if we charge the $100 and how many do we think we're going to issue. You know, it's completely new ground for me. So if we decide to charge the $100 fee, you know, if you look at the town, there's a quarter of the town in the floodplain, and then a quarter of my permits might be 40. You know, so, you know, we could kind of extrapolate something and say, you know, this is what we want the revenue to be, but, you know, again, that's new. I don't know what to put down on there.
Would you say, John, over the past few years, that 20,000, is that what you have been? Have you been?
We've been getting very close to it. You know, the first year I was here, it was only half a year. And we were always, you know, more than 17,000, I think. I could look back through, you know, but then the solar stuff, you know, last year it got skewed because Werner had to renew his permit. And when you renew the permit, it's half the original price plus 100. So he had to give me another $12,000 to renew that. And number 6 is going to have to do the same thing too, pretty quick here. So, you know, it adds up, you know, outside of the cell stuff. But we've been, I think I've renewed 7 or 8 permits so far this year for about another $1,000. So, you know. Okay, when we get into the actual contractual for the building, the first 2 items, the integrated property software system support, and then they also, the second item is the tablet support for the fire marshal and myself. Last year, they told me that it was going to be $1,590 for the system support and $736 for the tablet support. Well, they missed their numbers. It was $1,669 and $772, but that also covers us until 10/1 of next year. So I put down 3,000 and 1,000 because we're adding another person to the IPS license. So we've budgeted 3,000 and 1,000. The tablet support is only for the fire marshal and myself, but I cover all of the IPS charges for the town. And then Pam picks up the BAS charges in her budget. So that's kind of how we've got that split out. The membership in Flaboa that I do, that I've been told that's going to go up next year. That's the Finger Lakes Building Officials Association. And the town encourages us, well, it basically says we've got to be members of several organizations. So Flaboa is the one And the other one a little bit further down is, I belong to the Monroe County Fire Marshals and Inspectors, as well. The annual in-service conference, $500 this year, $500 next year. Last year, we set my mileage at 1,500 because we don't ever know what that's gonna be. It's building permit. That kind of drives how many inspections I go do and whatnot. So I kept that the same. The Monroe County Fire Marshals and Inspectors, that membership is going up. Cell phone stipend remained the same, at $600 a year. The next one went down quite a bit. That was the hardware and the software supplies. Last year, I was told to budget $5,400 because I bought a new desktop computer and a monitor. And that was the price that they gave me. It was like $4,000 and it only cost like $1,300. So we actually bought Marjorie's new computer out of my budget this year. But I put that back down to $1,500 just for miscellaneous. The building specific technology equipment, that went up to $750. Again, that's kind of a guess. ICC membership for the town, they told me it was going to be $145. This is something that used to come out of the supervisor's budget, and I took that over because the fire marshal and myself are the ones that basically use ICC. So that's $175. Last year, the second to last item, the code books, we had $1,000 down. The state has decided not to issue those until January of 25, and they told us that the cost is going to be closer to $1,700 for the books. We used to get the books free, but the state's not doing that anymore. And what we do is we buy a full set of code books that we keep in my office, and then I buy a separate fire code and property maintenance code, which is going to be kept in the fire marshal code enforcement officer's office downstairs. So last year for the contractual, we had 13,721. Going forward, it would be 12,775. And then the again, that number, the 8745,400, that's what Janice told me they had already established for this floodplain, and I put 500 for mileage. Again, I don't know what it's going to be. The thought process was we should keep things separate. The mileage, between the building and the floodplain, just so we can get some sort of a baseline on what we're spending. I did put cell phone down again because that's going to be part of that job. I think there's going to be a lot of phone calls on that. Building specific technology and equipment. I don't know if we're going to need any software or anything for that. And this next one, printing services, I glossed over that one up at the top, and excuse me, we had $1,500 down there because what's happened in the last year, Pam has put codes onto the printer and copier, so that if you want color copies or if you want double-sided or you want something else funky, you have to put your code in. And I do an awful lot of printing, when I get applications. Right now, when I get a generator application, which they come every week, I get 25 pages of technical documents that we have to hold on to for the generators. Or if somebody puts in a fireplace or a gas fireplace, the state says I have to have the manufacturer's installation instructions, and that could be 30 pages. So I do a lot of printing. Last year, we agreed upon $1,500 for printing services. I don't know if Pam's going to take that money or not, but we've got it allocated. And I also put money in for the floodplain contractual in case we have to do that too. And again, the $500 was a guess because I don't know what it's going to entail. And the last thing I put in for the contractual for the floodplain is training. I can actually go up as high as being a nationally certified floodplain administrator. I don't have any aspirations to that title, but there are local programs that the DEC and other organizations put on that might help us to understand this process better. And I'm already starting to network with some of the folks that the DEC has suggested and people within FLABOA and the fire marshals that are also involved with floodplain. So again, the items for the contractual for the floodplain, some of them are a guess, and I'm not sure how to do that differently.
My apologies if somebody's speaking. I may have lost everybody.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I did. I don't know that I had anything really to add. I just wasn't sure if the silence was anything that I was missing. My apologies.
No, you're good.
I think we're good. Yeah. Questions on the budget? No.
I would just question the additional floodplain specific budgeted items for mileage and cell phones stipend. I mean, typically a cell phone plan covers, I mean, my plan is like unlimited, whatever, and it is what it is. So it's not going to, if I make 10 calls or 20 calls, my charge is not going to change.
No, but your charges go up.
I'm sorry?
Your charges go up though.
No, it's a flat fee I pay.
Oh.
That's it. So if I make 1 call or 1,000 calls, it's gonna be the same. My cost is the same every month.
Okay.
So
And I think that's my way of saying that I think the stipend is inadequate.
I don't know what your phone usage is. I mean, I have a stipend and with my other hat, as a former partner. But it's just based on some reasonable number, knowing that I get phone calls and emails and so on and so forth, that I have to have my phone. And it's just like, here you go. Okay, good, I'm happy. Just saying, usually it's flat fees. I'm nitpicking here, but. I
And,
just don't see where things-
it is nitpicking because my hours are 7 o'clock till noon. And I take calls at 9 o'clock at night. I take calls on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and it pays for my convenience.
That's why you get a stipend,
I'm saying the stipend's inadequate.
more than other people get around here. Just,
Well, I figure, and I'm gonna defend that because I talk to the residents outside of my work hours. I talk to them on the weekends. And I think that's worth something.
thing. But all I'm saying is that it has nothing, and I'm assuming it has nothing to do with the cost of the phone. And I appreciate you talking to people. And, you know, that's why we increased your personal services budgets over the years as well to reflect that. Just a comment.
No, that's
Just a
fine.
comment, you know, and everybody can think about that, but
And the,
I don't know what your cell phone plan is or whether we should be looking at, you know, a business phone.
I'm not gonna carry 2 telephones.
I'm sorry?
I won't carry 2 telephones. And that's what a lot of guys do.
Yeah, and that's, you know, some places of business require that. There's your business phone, you do whatever you want to do on your personal phone.
In the last 40 years, I've never had to carry 2 phones. I'm not, I mean,
That may be true, John,
All right.
and I don't want to argue.
no, you just said you wanted to nitpick and I'm gonna nitpick back. Okay, I'm gonna nitpick back.
For cell phone usage, and not everybody gets a stipend, we're giving a stipend. And
And again, it's your approval of the budget. And the reason I did the mileage separate is because I want to track mileage separate for floodplain versus uh, uh, the building stuff. And my mileage, if, we put down the $1,500, if I only use 900, the other 600 goes back into the general fund. It's not like, I'm getting that amount. So I just wanted to separate them so that we weren't, I could come back and tell you that this is what it cost me to administer this program. Well, I appreciate the time going over all this stuff because this floodplain is an awful lot to.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to go over it with us, so.
I think we're on a good path. And the nice thing is the DEC is very encouraged too. Because like I said at the beginning, a lot of other municipalities aren't in compliance either, and he's excited that we're taking the steps that we are. So I think it's good to stay on their good side.
You mentioned there's 9 houses under construction or soon to be. What do we do with those?
Before May, nothing. Since May, when this has become an issue, I've been looking, yep, they're good. I've got one that's coming in now, 2,500 square foot down on Stony Brook. And I told him, we're close enough to adopting this that I want his engineer to put that grade elevation on the drawing so that we've got it. The other thing that's good is that our
Based
plan.
on the maps that you have now, can you tell them whether they're,
Oh, yes,
either they're in it or out?
on this one on Stony Brook, they're out completely.
Okay.
But the other good news is that the planning board with their seeker review is doing a lot of this preliminary stuff. It's not total, but it's,
Right, the planning board is always,
yeah, part of the seeker is part of that is the floodplain. It just hasn't moved over to the other side, which is the bulk of the permits, which are, don't go through the planning board. So, yeah, that's the good news on the houses.
yeah.
We are gonna get some pushback from people that, well, so-and-so got to do this, and it's like, I can't address that at this point in time. We can only address what we knew and what we know and what we're gonna do going forward. So those are gonna be the hard points to sell to people.
When they, contacted the DEC, go under that public meeting.
I haven't asked him, but I could broach it with him. I didn't even know if the town board wanted to come to the meeting. Because then it would be, you would have to advertise it, which might not be a bad thing. I just, I didn't know what the appetite of the board was to come. I don't want you guys to take a beating for what people are gonna be upset about. I don't,
I don't know if it would make it, it's like set meeting for the town board, but I would just make it like a public meeting, then we come as residents, not as.
well, see, I don't know the legalities of that, if you can just show up.
I don't see any issue with doing that.
Yeah, the one that you just did for the sidewalk and the bicycle.
Yeah.
Pedestrian.
I could certainly ask he's an engineer from the DEC. I could ask him if he'd be willing to, or,
I think he might, but I know my environmental world, I feel they show a lot of public.
okay.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
He seemed very encouraged by our response.
Yeah, he just inherited this too. He was Pure Waters. And he got told that, oh, by the way, now you've got floodplain too. So for Region 8, so. But yeah, no problem asking him what, And I don't know how big of a response we would get, I would think we would get a fair number of folks.
It's crazy.
I know.
All right, we're closing it after 8, but,
Well,
we had a little,
I'm not gonna
somebody
find
was late, so.
It's okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And like I said, if there's questions, email me so I can get the answers out to everybody.
Only gonna close the meeting. All in favor?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you,
Have a
Kevin.
good day, everybody. Bye.